What's up, guys? Welcome back to Zilla MMA. I am your host, as always, the Zilla. I want to start the episode as I always do, and that's by thanking you guys, the viewers. Always appreciate your support. You guys are the best. I had some good feedback on some videos lately. Helped me develop some new ideas and into some things we can do in the future to make these videos even better. Changing the format on a few things, which you may notice in this video. All positive, I think. But really appreciate you guys. Like I said, please don't forget, like, subscribe, leave some comments with some pics of your own. We really haven't seen much of that lately. I'd love to see some pics that you guys have down in the comments. That'd be really useful to the channel. Yeah, but besides that, we can go ahead and get into the most recent card. Just a quick recap of last week. So overall, a positive card. Went 8-4 on the card as a whole, which is about our expectation week to week. Anything worse than that, I don't feel very good about it. And then our green plays, which are our top plays in the confidence rankings, you'll see that at the end of the video. We go 3-1, again, about the expectation. I'd love to go 4-0 in those. Usually just one guy at the top that screws things up for us. And that did did happen on this one. We'll get into that in a minute. You see we've changed the format to just picks. You'll see as the video goes on, we're changing up the way that we are giving picks in these videos now. But Lawson's been giving us his lock of the week every week. 3-0 up to this point. Had to make a late change that we had to put out on Twitter due to the change in that Tafa fight. But gets to 3-0 on the year. We're up just over 2 units so far on the year in our picks there. So very exciting with that. But just looking at the card, in our confidence rankings, I believe we hit the 3 of the ones that we missed were at the bottom of our confidence rankings. I mean, we hit 7 of our top 8. Felt really good, and things went pretty well overall if you're looking at it broadly. A lot of it just soured by the Volkanovski performance. A very difficult one for me to swallow. I'm a huge Volk fan. I have reiterated that pretty confident, as you saw in the last video. And I think he was winning the fight. I think he put on a performance he can be proud of. I do wish he'd been moving forward a little bit more and forcing his game plan onto Topuria. Unfortunately, just doesn't do that. Topuria able to land the big shot as Volk's backing up, ends up with his back up against the cage. And just a brutal knockout, tough knockout. Good for Topuria. Good for good for his whole country. I know that they were backing him, but a tough one to swallow there. Whitaker gets the win, as we predicted. Costa definitely better performance than I expected, though. Those kicks were vicious. But Whitaker gets the win there. Gary obviously gets the win in the split decision. For some reason, Joe Rogan just had a hard-on for Gary throughout that entire commentary. Pretty much the whole crew did, and made a lot of people believe that Gary had won more dominantly than he did. Pretty close fight. Like I said, I didn't think that was the fraud check spot, but it's coming soon. Merab just dog-walked Henry. Just a complete embarrassment. Just showing off for the crowd, and really put an exclamation point on that fact that he needs to be the next one after this Cheeto fight to go and fight Sean O'Malley for the belt. And I think he left no doubt. Just a really, really impressive performance, just carrying over for Mark Zuckerberg to see him just wailing on Henry. Cejudo just an absolute shell of himself out there. But Merab is the future. He's the truth. Hard to deny him there. We were on that one as well. Um, Anthony Hernandez, very, very impressive against Kopylov, going out, getting that rear naked choke. Love seeing that. Anything else of note? Lawson's lock, he had flipped to Delima when the Tafa brothers switched out due to that injury. Lands the low kicks. For some reason, tries to shoot a takedown right after he has Tafa injured. Really weird situation there. Shows why Lawson initially picked against Delima. Just not a very strong performance from him, but he does get the win in that spot. Nakamura able to get the win as well. Unable to get a finish yet again. Tough to see that. Guy who's really impressive on this card was Danny Barlow. Really impressive. Definitely has a future in the UFC, in my opinion. He looked really good, able to get the finish in the third round. But other than that, guys, just a pretty good card, pretty exciting card. I enjoyed it for the most part. And surprisingly, normally coming off those pay-per-views, we don't get another exciting card. I think this is a really, really, really good fight night down in Mexico City. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and get into that card. All right, first fight of the card, we've got Muhammad Naimov versus Eric Silva. Naimov, the minus 375 favorite here. I'm not the craziest about Naimov. I think there's definitely some holes in his game. And maybe he's getting a little too much hype just because of those wins over Jamie Malarkey and Nathaniel Wood, even though he did show some of his flaws in those fights, in my opinion. That being said, I just don't see Eric Silva as being the guy who's going to be able to expose him. I give Naimov the edge in just about every department in this matchup, if we're being honest. He's going to walk forward, pressure Silva right from the jump, and I just see it being more than he can handle. My only concern for Naimov in this spot would be his cardio at this, Mexico City altitude. Probably going to be a recurring theme with this card. But honestly, I'm just as concerned, if not more concerned, with Silva on that front. All the credit in the world to him for making it to the UFC, though. Made his debut at 35 years old. Unfortunately, can't see it last him much longer after this. Gonna take another loss here, in my opinion. So, give me Naimov by knockout in this first fight. Next up, we have Victor Altamirano versus Felipe Dos Santos. Dos Santos, the minus 300 favorite here. Actually pretty impressed with Dos Santos making his debut short notice fight against Kopp. This guy can throw and has some power in his hands, too, for this weight class. He's going to have some volume coming back at him for sure. Altamirano can definitely throw, but just doesn't have the same juice on it. I also think Dos Santos could probably take this to the ground if he wants to, but I really expect both these guys to be trying to stand and bang in this fight. Not my most confident pick on the card, but I really do like what I've seen from Dos Santos. Hopefully he can keep this success going and get his first UFC win in this spot. So give me Dos Santos here. I'll take him by decision. Third fight here, we've got Luis Rodriguez versus Dennis Bondar. Rodriguez, the minus 115 favorite. Really close line here. A tough one to pick. I'm not really that high on either of these guys, if I'm being honest. I just haven't loved what I've seen from the tape from Rodriguez up to this point. Had a Contender Series shot, lost there. Now somehow has gotten his way back here. I think he's had 5 fights since the Contender Series fight. Just some low-level wins. Fought in Lux Fight League, not a promotion I'm really familiar with. Probably earned the spot largely due to it being in Mexico City, trying to get Mexican fighters for this card. Bondar also not that impressive, though. Lost his 2 UFC fights up to this point, but I guess he's earned some good experience. I think he should have a slight edge in striking, and hopefully he does have an edge in reach here, so hopefully he can use that as well. Pretty tough one to choose. I'm going to side with Bondar to get it done in this fight, though. I'm going to take Bondar here, and we will take him by decision. Next up, we have Claudio Puelles versus Faris Ziam. Ziam, the minus 215 favorite here. Puelles just not a guy that I'd ever feel comfortable putting my money behind. You can go watch that Dan Hooker fight back, and that should tell you every reason why right there. He's very good at what he does. I mean, I can't take anything away from him. Um, Being a big Ryan Hall fan, I definitely have respect for it, but he's just such a one-dimensional fighter, one of the most one-dimensional fighters in the UFC. Leg lock specialist, very good at it, but he's also just willing to do anything to be able to get the position he wants, and that includes eating some massive shots. You know, he's kind of made a reputation for doing that, and just the path to victory here is so narrow. Um, Ziam isn't someone I'm super excited to put my money behind, but he does have solid boxing, and that could be enough to beat this guy, if we're being honest. Now, if he starts messing around in grappling exchanges, things get a little dicey. I hope that's not how this goes down, but hopefully, it seems like he's starting to throw more volume, and if he can do that, I think he can make this fight an easy win for him. So I'm going to take Ziam here. I'm going to have him get the finish. Let's take him in this spot by KO. Next up, we have Edgar Chairez versus Daniel Lacerda. Chairez, the minus 350 favorite here. First of three rematches on this card. This one coming off of what ended up being ruled later, an early stoppage. A bit of a controversial call, but I do think the stoppage was wrong. Just didn't happen, in my opinion. But I do think it was eventually heading towards a submission for Chairez regardless. Odd line with this being fairly close to pick'em the first time they fought. But honestly, I can kind of see why. Chairez just looked like the much better all-around fighter if you really go back and watch it. Lacerda seemed to attempt to fight a more reserved fight than he usually does and preserve his gas tank, and because of that, he got eaten alive by some shots from Chairez. Just really ripping to the legs and getting work done. He was able to land a takedown. I will give him that credit, but Chairez clearly seemed to be controlling the grappling exchanges, if we're being honest. I mean, he almost got that submission in a grappling exchange when Lacerda was trying to get it back to the ground. Now there is a chance that Lacerda comes back out here and fights in the style that we've seen from him previously leading up to this fight, a more aggressive style, but even in that scenario, I still don't see him having much of a chance here. He would probably gas and end up having this fight go the same way. So no matter which style he chooses, I think Chairez is the right side here. I'm going to take him again by submission for real this time. Next up, we have Jesus Aguillar versus Mateus Mendonca. Mendonca minus 155. Honestly, this fight just came down to whether I can trust Mendonca again after his last performance. A fight against Manis, a fight I broke down here on Zilla MMA on the first ever video we put on the channel. And I was really confident in Mendonca. Felt really good about him in that fight. And then he goes in with this ridiculous game plan, gets himself knocked out. I truly believe he was the better fighter then, and I truly believe he's the better fighter now. Should have a slight grappling advantage, big power advantage, almost 10-inch reach advantage. On paper, complete physical mismatch. But in reality, I just remember that Mendonca fight where he's rolling around for a heel hook after looking like the better fighter. I knew he could be in this in that fight early. He just lets it go. I'm gonna reluctantly take Mendonca here. Hopefully, we'll fight smarter, use the advantages he has here. But if he loses this one, I promise you, I'm not going to be burned a third time by this guy. But I will take him here, and we will take him by knockout. Next up, we have Christian Quinonez versus Raoni Barcelos. Barcelos minus 180. Generally, I just think Barcelos is the better fighter here. I mean, just all around. I like his mix of striking, his wrestling, his jiu-jitsu. Just an all-around good fighter, but Unfortunately, as we all know, Father Time is undefeated, and his age is definitely starting to catch up with him if you go back and watch the tape. That being said, even with that playing a factor, I don't feel like Quinonez is skilled enough to beat him here. You look at the recent losses from Barcelos, you see names like Cousin Umar and Kyle Phillips, a level of fighter, in my opinion, well above Quinonez. Quinonez has, decent striking, but watching the tape, I just find it kind of lazy and one dimensional. Nothing that Barcelos can't handle here. I fully believe that as long as the age hasn't caught up with him, Barcelos is you know, even better in the striking department, which is probably where Quinonez would have the edge. Um, but if age has caught up with him faster than I would have thought, that this could definitely get a little dangerous. So not going to put it too high in the confidence rankings, but I still think he's going to be able to get the win in this spot. I'm going to take Barcelos here, and I will take him by submission. Next up, we have Manuel Torres versus Chris Duncan. Torres coming in here as a minus 155 favorite. Really interesting fight between these two guys. Both trending upwards, in my opinion. Both look like they could have some promising careers ahead of them. Torres has looked really impressive with his striking up to this point in the UFC. Landed a beautiful elbow to get that win over Mata. Really opened the eyes of a lot of people on him as a fighter. Biggest concern is what we'll see from him if this gets out of round one. Not something we've seen a ton of up to this point. I don't have much confidence in Duncan's defense and think he should be a little chinny. But if he is able to hold off Torres, there's almost no footage of him fighting in the second round. And the altitude of Mexico City is kind of a tough place to show that off if you've got it. If this does get out of the first round, Duncan definitely has a good chance. Solid grappling, and it could definitely control Torres if he can get this into the later rounds. But I'm still thinking Torres is going to be able to land that big shot. I think he's going to be able to get it done. But don't expect this anywhere close to the top in the confidence rankings. We'll take Torres here by knockout, but definitely one that I'm going to be very light on if I'm on it at all. Next up, we have Yasmin Jauregui versus Sam Hughes. Yasmin, the minus 550 favorite here. Biggest favorite of the card. I really don't want to take Sam Hughes here. I am not big on Sam Hughes at all, but this line is crazy. I'm not overly impressed by Yasmin, and I don't really think I'd want her minus 550 against anybody. Sure, she's a better striker here, probably by a big margin if we're being honest, but this is women's MMA. We've seen crazier things happen. We don't see a ton of knockouts, and so impactful striking may not really matter when you start thinking about it like that. And on top of that, I would say that if we're questioning anyone's durability here, it's probably got to be Yasmin. Definitely some question marks in her grappling game as well. Hughes, not the best wrestler in the world, but she could take advantage of that here. And if she can get some control time, she might have a shot in this fight. Very good chance this pick is dead wrong. I'll go ahead and put that out there. Good chance Yasmin pieces her up, finishes her easily, but at this number, I just feel like I have no choice but decide with Hughes here. So I'm going to take Sam Hughes, and I'm going to take her by decision. Next up, we have Raul Rosas Jr. versus Ricky Turcios. Rosas, the minus 250 favorite. I still really like Rosas. We have been burned by him once now, and we're reminded he's still a young kid. He's learning. He's not fully developed. We shouldn't be backing him at these crazy numbers. But even with that being said, the Christian Rodriguez fight is aging pretty well for him at this point, and it does give me some pause in picking him, but I not in this fight. I really think this is a good matchup for him. I like Ricky too. Don't get me wrong. I really enjoyed watching him on The Ultimate Fighter. I think he's a guy who has a great personality for the sport. He's got a weird style, knows how to put on a show. a little Tony Ferguson-esque, I will say. Um, Certainly not the talent level, but just reminds me of him in style and personality a little bit. Um, a place where Ricky seems to struggle, though, is the takedown defense, and there's just not a worse spot for that than here. I expect Rosas to ragdoll him for 3 rounds. The only slight worry I do have is Rosas' gas tank. We've seen that be a problem, and being at elevation here definitely could be an issue, especially considering Ricky has a great gas tank, and if that opportunity gets left open, he will definitely take advantage of it later in the fight. Um, I think Rosas should come prepared here. I think he's making the proper improvements. Like I said, he's young, he's growing, he's getting better. And I think he's ready to put on a good performance for this Mexican crowd. So I'm going to take Rosas here. I will take him by decision. Next up, we have Daniel Zellhuber versus Francisco Prado. Zellhuber minus 285 coming into this. Overall, I think Zellhuber's just better everywhere, but not a complete slam dunk here. Um, Great kickboxer, though. Massive frame for the weight class. Coming in with an 8-inch reach advantage. Pretty solid grappler. But the concern I have is I'm afraid he might be a little bit chinny. You know, he hasn't been knocked out yet, but we've seen him get rocked quite a few times now, and Prado hits very, very hard. Now, Zellhuber, after getting rocked, he's recovered very well. He's been able to come back from it in all his fights. But he's very young, and I just have a little concern that if he faces some serious adversity after eating a shot like that, he might not be able to recover. But that being said, I still think he should have enough here to beat Prado. He needs to make sure he can keep him on the outside, use that size difference to his advantage. But as long as he's able to stay awake, I think he will be able to get it done. I'm going to trust that he does have, deep down, does have that famous Mexican toughness. Won't allow himself to be knocked out and taken out of the fight like that. So I'm going to take Zellhuber here. I'm going to take him to get the win by decision. Next up, we have the co-main event. We have Yair Rodriguez versus Brian Ortega. Rodriguez, the minus 155 favorite here. Second rematch of the card from back in July of 2022. This is the spot where Ortega suffered a bit of a fluky shoulder injury that ended the fight. I do find it a little disrespectful. I don't think people go over the top with it, but how little people give credit to Yair for the submission attempt he was going for that caused the injury. Certainly not an injury that we normally see from a submission attempt like that, but he did have a part in it. I don't think it's completely fluky to say that he won this fight. Regardless, we haven't seen Ortega since, and honestly, that's really concerning for me. It's got to be really concerning for you. I like Ortega. Don't get me wrong, I do. And we've seen him compete against some of the best fighters in the UFC. I mean, seeing him against Volk, and almost getting that submission, it's hard to take anything away from the guy. But to just expect him to walk into Mexico City after nearly 2 years off and be the same fighter we knew before seems pretty optimistic to me. It doesn't seem realistic. Historically, we've seen him really bring the pressure. The striking has improved over the years. The grappling and submission threats are always what's really shined with him. But, coming in against Yair on the other side, just so impressive. Very quick striking, awesome kicks. Should be able to land at will in this fight. Coming in off a pretty brutal beating from Volk, but I think that's more of a credit to Volk than a negative to Yair. Now, there is a chance that Yair ends up in a bad spot here, able to get submitted, but I think he's well aware of that threat at this point and should be prepared for it. I've seen Ortega as a popular dog with a lot of people this week. I just don't see it at all. I'm thinking people maybe are making picks more with their hearts than their eyes. because all week I've seen a guy who's talked about retiring, how he felt like he may need to retire after that last injury. Um, a guy who's been very emotional in press conferences, a guy who brought his family out for a face-off. It looks to me like a guy with one foot out the door. And we've talked about it a million times. You don't bet on guys with a foot out the door. Um, just not a guy I would ever back. Uh, Seeing what I've seen from him this week, I like this pick a lot. I'm going to go with Rodriguez here. I'm going to take him by knockout. And finally, we have the main event, Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval. Moreno, the minus 260 favorite here. Another rematch where you can say it was decided by a fluke injury, but also another fight where I think the better fighter got their hand raised at the end of the first matchup. Uh, don't get me wrong. Royval is a good fighter, maybe even a great fighter, but he just hasn't been able to break through against these, the top tier talent. He's gonna bring a pace and be ready to throw down against lower level talent, but that's often, with lower level talent, that's enough to get it done. Um, but not against a guy like Brandon Moreno. Moreno just an absolutely outstanding fighter. Could be open to eating a few big shots. His defense isn't as clean as I would like it to be. And we've seen him get rocked before, but I just think he's more skilled just about everywhere. Um, we saw him take advantage of the grappling in the first fight, and we've seen Royval lose in those exchanges before in his career. Um, yeah, it's just exactly how I see this fight going again. Um, I won't be surprised to see Royval potentially have some success on the feet, but I think Moreno is just so much more technically sound. Going to be able to outbox him, probably land some takedowns, and I think he's going to be able to ultimately get the submission win here. So my pick in the main event is going to be Brandon Moreno by submission. So that will do it for our breakdown of this card. Next, we're going to get into our picks for the card. A little bit of a special surprise here. So we will have Lawson on with Lawson's Lock, as we have the past three cards. And he's been outstanding, 3-0, coming in trying to make it 4-0 here this week. But as I discussed, we're working on how we are going to have our bets going forward, and um, like I said, I gave out picks last week that if you bet strictly what I gave you, you probably came out around even or just slightly above. And I feel like that's not a legitimate reflection of the picks. I think we did very well last week. So we're going to try things a little different. Lawson is going to give his lock. I'm going to give a lock of my own. And we're going to try and bring on other guests, other friends of mine who are big into MMA. I'd love to find some other YouTubers out there at some point, too, to bring on to get picks and build a record. We'll be keeping that on. I'll be building graphics for that as well. So, but that's something I'm really excited about. We do have our first new guest to the show today, second guest ever on Zilla MMA, and that is going to be Jay Money. I'll be introducing him here in a minute, but we're very excited. So two big picks here. We'll be right back right after with my pick, confidence rankings, and prize picks for the upcoming card. But without further ado, guys, Lawson's Lock of the Week. All right, guys. Well, welcome back. A segment that has become popularly known as Lawson's Lock of the Week. Um, and we can still call this segment that, obviously, but we had always had the plan to get more people on here to make some picks, and we finally decided to do that this week. Introducing the second ever guest to Zilla MMA, and that is Jay Money. Jay Money, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, how's it going? Happy to be on the show. I've been a long time supporter. Let's get into some picks.
Awesome. And of course, as always, we will welcome back the still undefeated in 2024 Lawson. How does it feel? I know last week you had to make a late pivot. The guy you were on and one of the Taffa brothers pulled out late, and you had to make a last minute switch on that fight.
Well, yeah, it was always a little bit risky of a pick. It was never super, in on Tafa, just kind of fading DeLima based on, his last performance. But when they made the switch to Junior, he's not good. And DeLima was obviously better. DeLima's still an idiot for not,
I was gonna
for
say,
not just sticking to the leg kick, but
I think this fight made you seem twice as smart too, because you made the right pick on it, but also very obvious that DeLima is a bum
yeah,
because he's has that leg battered, almost has him out of there, and then decides he's gonna shoot a takedown for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, the guy's obviously just terrified of getting hit. So
Right.
I'll be fading him next time he fights. Mark that down. We're fading DeLima.
Absolutely. Um, But with that being said, you ended up having to go to a guy who was around minus 220. Not something I know you normally like to do. I'm sure you're going to find a way to make that up to us this week.
Oh, you bet I am. This week, we're going with a little bit of a heat check. We got
right.
a 3-leg parlay cooked up in the works, ready to rumble. And I'm pretty confident in it.
Well, we've discussed it a little bit. I know this guy may potentially be in here. I don't know what you finalized it with, but because of that potential, I think it's going to be best for us to start off with J Money's pick. J Money, go ahead and let us know what you're seeing on this card.
All right, so the J money play of the week. I'm taking Yair Rodriguez. He's just been way more active than Brian Ortega. He's striking so much crisper, and when you have a long layoff like Ortega, you just can't deal with that kind of striking. And plus, in the first fight, we saw Yair Rodriguez dominate him on the feet. He has good enough jiu-jitsu where even if it goes to the ground, which we know Ortega doesn't have the best takedowns, I think he can hold his own. And I have a system, and Yair fits my system that I'm putting together, and he's my big money play this week.
And I tend to agree with all your analysis on that. I also add into there, I think, Ortega's got a foot out the door. And I talked a lot about all this earlier on the show, but having his family at that press conference and, doing the face off. And I've seen some videos this week of him nearly crying and talking about how he almost retired after his last injury. Just not the kind of guy I like to back when guys are like that. I also think a lot of credit is taken away from Yair a little disrespectfully. I know that's not normally how we see um, that type of injury happen, but it's a submission attempt that he was in when his
Right.
shoulder pops out. And I think Yair catches, gets a little, oh well, it was fluky. I don't see it that way. Yair obviously very dominant on the feet in my in my estimation, and uh, really kind of a fluky takedown where they got down there in the first place, where they were up against the cage. I think Yair can handle himself here. I really like that pick a lot. It's one that I was considering for my top pick of the week. So, well, Lawson, what do you think of it?
And Josh said mainly the same reasons why I'm going with Yair in the parlay this week. The layoff, I think, is huge. He hadn't fought since 2022. Also hasn't won a fight since 2020.
Right.
Not since the Korean Zombie.
Yeah. So we're at 3.5 years without a win. So with the layoff, and I really just think it's a no-brainer here this week.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I like everything about that play. Think he's kind of got a foot out the door. Go ahead, Money.
And I will say, in rematches, the younger fighter always, if the younger fighter won the first fight, he's just going to win the second fighter even quicker. That's not part of my new system, but that's just a betting trend that you really got to look out for. So I'm predicting knockout first round. I mean, even more devastating than the submission in the first fight.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Well, Lawson, as you mentioned, that is one of the legs of your parlay. I wasn't sure if that was going to make it in there, but it did. Revealing obviously that you do have that parlay this week, trying to make up some of the money we missed out on last week. Let's go ahead and get into your other legs.
So the second leg, first fight of the night, we're going with Naimov over Eric Silva. I just don't think Eric Silva's that good. Obviously, Naimov came out in his last fight, pretty big win as a dog. Silva, I haven't seen anything in his last fight with TJ Brown that makes me think that, he's really any good. Kind of keeping a similar system, a similar pattern to what I've had in my other picks, kind of just fading guys that I don't have a whole lot of faith in. So I think that this is a no-brainer. Obviously, Naimov is a super favorite. Couldn't just take that straight up. So he's going in the lay as the first leg. Once again, obviously, I think it's a no-brainer, but hopefully we don't have a huge dog on the first fight of the night in this parlay early.
Yeah, and I actually got on that fight pretty early this week. Got him at minus 375. I see latest number has him all the way up at minus 650 now, which is crazy. And also I'm not even that crazy about Naimov. I mean, he's a solid fighter, but he's got some holes in his game. And like I said, talked about this earlier on the show, but is getting a lot of hype because of that win over Malarkey and the win over Nathaniel Wood. Obviously impressive wins, but there were some moments in those fights where he didn't look that great. But going up against Silva, I completely agree with you 100%. The guy's just not it. I think he made his MMA professional debut at like the age of 30. Just got into the UFC. Didn't look good in his first performance here. Really, he's 36 years old. He's pretty limited in what he can do. Doesn't have a great gas tank. Naimov, in fairness, doesn't either. But in Mexico City, that's really not a great place for that to be the case. Yeah, I like him a lot here. I think it's a really good pick, especially in a parlay. So, yeah, definitely a very good second leg there.
And to round it off, this parlay, by the way, is plus 189, I think, somewhere around there. I think that's what I got it at. I told you another fighter earlier. I've actually pulled out of that. I'm going with someone else. I'm actually going with Torres over Duncan. And I will tell you why. So obviously Torres has been a knockout machine his last couple fights, even going back to the Contender Series. He's won his last 3 via knockout. What makes me very interested in this, I saw something today that was going through like who's kind of been training where. Duncan trains at basically sea level, 13 feet of elevation. He got to Mexico this week. Torres has been training at 7,000 feet, and he's been at Mexico City for a few weeks now. I think that Duncan might actually come out fighting at the high altitude, might actually play a huge factor in this fight. Once I saw that today, I already kind of like Torres as it was, but I really think after that new information's come out, I think that this is a prime time spot, and especially I think he's sitting at about minus 170 right now. I think that this could be a great play, possibly straight if you wanted to up the units a little bit, but definitely going into this parlay.
Yeah, and this is one where I am on the same side as you. I am on Torres. I actually got him at minus 155. Um, it is one that's a little scary to me. This is the scariest leg of the parlay, in my opinion, for sure. Um, Obviously, you want this kind of juice, though. You got to take it somewhere. Uh, but a big threat for the knockout. Um, I am a little worried about the grappling of Duncan. He's a solid fighter in his own right. I don't want to take too much away from him. I think this is more of a credit to Torres. Has been a real knockout machine since getting here. I think he had that really nice elbow against Mata that a lot of people saw it and really liked from him. Um, but yeah, I think you're right. Duncan recently made the move to American Top Team, if I'm not mistaken. So that would be the sea level place that you're talking about him training. Historically, Torres has had some gas tank issues of his own, though, which kind of worries me. In my opinion, though, and in my analysis that I gave for this fight, I really don't think it's going to matter. Um, as far as the gas tank situation goes, I don't love Duncan's defense, to be honest. And you can't eat the kind of shots that we've seen Torres throwing in these last few fights. And for that reason, I think it's more likely than not he gets this done in the first round.
Yeah, I honestly haven't looked to see what the odds were. I wasn't really interested in looking, but whatever the over under is for rounds, I think the under might be a great play here because I just don't see it going more than a round and a half.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. Like I said, Duncan could be a danger if this gets into the later rounds, and he does have something in the tank, and he can lay on him in the later rounds. That could worry me a little bit. Like I said, this is definitely the least confident of the three that you have, but I am on Torres as well. Was my pick on the show this week. Um, yeah, I like all three of these picks. I think getting the juice that you're getting on this, making up what we lost out on last week, I like it a lot.
Yep. I think this is a prime time spot to get a little plus odds action in there finally.
Yeah, no, I love to see it. I know you've been wanting to get on a dog. Things just haven't worked. You had one last week,
Yeah.
And things just haven't worked out for it. But this is the week where I think we get it done. A pretty impressive Mexico card, to be honest. Coming off a big pay per view with all the fighters we saw last week, and coming into this, it's uh really a fun card.
No,
Yeah,
I am excited about this. It was hard picking like fights in this because I'm excited to see a lot of these guys fight this week.
yeah.
Absolutely.
This is really what all fight night cards should be. Really, I mean, having hometown people from the area just makes the cards feel bigger instead of being an apex.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the Mexican fighters are really going to show out. I don't think this is going to be like the Canada situation at all. I think they've got some really good fighters on this card, and I think Mexico is going to show out here. Jay Money, anything else from you?
No, that's it. I mean, I'm just going to keep working on my system. Hopefully, I had a good start with the system last week. I wasn't on the show, but I had a good start to my system. Maybe once I start getting rolling with the system, I'll reveal it on the channel for you.
Lawson, any final thoughts?
I don't think anything right now. Said everything I need to say. I think we're ready to go this week.
Awesome. Well, guys, as always, really appreciate you. Lawson trying to keep the undefeated streak going and get our first dog on the show. And Jay Money, would love to get a win from you in our debut. Because if you don't, then Lawson's missed as well. So we're in some serious trouble if that happens. So, but thank you guys. Really appreciate you as always.
Absolutely. And if you haven't noticed, camera's landscape. I've been filming it in portrait. If we lose this week, we're going back to portrait.
Sounds good, man. Thank you. Thank you to you as well, Jay Money.
Yep.
Thank you again, Jay Money and Lawson. Love your picks this week. I'm sure it's going to go very well for us. Really appreciate you guys coming onto the show. But we'll go ahead and get the last bit of information out here so we can go ahead and wrap up and get out of here for you. First, the confidence rankings, as always. 4 guys we have in the green this week in Rosas, Moreno, Yair Rodriguez, and Zellhuber. Guys I feel really confident in. Not that many that are at the bottom tier where I really don't feel good about them this week. Just the Bondar and Hughes. A lot of fighters there that are coming out in the middle for this one. But as you can see, the two that I'm really feeling strongly about outside of Yair Rodriguez, which we just talked about in nauseum, both Lawson and Jay Money are using Yair in their plays of the week. I decided I did not want to do that same thing, give you guys a little bit of a different look here. So we'll go ahead and take a look at all the plays that we have this week. Lawson's lock, as you see there, Naimov, Torres, and Yair Rodriguez comes out at plus 195. J Money going with Yair Rodriguez, getting that at minus 150. And I'm going to go with Rosas and Moreno, a parlay here, getting that at minus 105. Feel really good about both those fighters. Think both of them should get the win here. If you're not that much of a straight bet gambler, if prize picks is more your thing, I'm still sticking around with those same general picks, but do have a format for those for you. First one we'll go with here. I do like Rosa's fantasy score over. I think he's going to have control, get his takedowns, potentially work for a submission here. This fight's just really tailored for him, so I feel good about that there. Next up, we'll have Brandon Moreno over in significant strikes. I don't expect this one to be a early finish here. I think he should. This could get into the later rounds. He's going to be looking to strike. He's going to land some big shots. I think 67.5 is the number he should get to pretty comfortably. And finally, we have the Yair Rodriguez fight. I believe J Money talked on it. I share the opinion. I think there's a good chance he gets the knockout very early here. If even if you're someone who's backing Ortega here, most likely I would think that you are thinking that is going to be by submission. I think it's very likely this fight ends inside the distance. So we're going to take under 14.75 minutes in fight time. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Like I said, bear with us. We're making some changes. We're trying some different things out. Let us know if you like it or don't like it. You want to go back to some of the old stuff we did. But I really like how this one turned out. I hope you guys do too. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell your friends. We need to get the subscriber count up, grow this channel. And like I said, leave some comments. I haven't seen much of that. I'd love to see more of that with your picks and what you're feeling this week. But other than that, guys, that'll do it for us here. We will see you for the card next week. But until then, see ya.